Hi everyone, so welcome to day 3 of the Fluent Flow Challenge. Today we're going to be examining the structure of a flow and how to hook them together. So transitions are a big focus of this video. And one thing that a lot of people really struggle with at first in their yoga practice is getting from a downward facing dog into a warrior. So we introduced the Warrior 1 and the Warrior 2 in day 2 of this challenge. But how do we get from our sun salutations into the warrior poses? Well, I'm going to introduce that to you today. And also a reminder, I've created tutorials on sun salutation A and B, so if you've missed those, I would recommend watching them. The links are in the description. And so let's head to our mat. And when we've done our sun salutation, we end up in a downward facing dog with our hips to the sky, long spine. And to get into our Warrior 1, we take our right foot to the sky, and then we tuck the knee into the chest. You want to really exaggerate this movement of the knee coming all the way into the chest, so your knee is aiming to touch your nose. And of course, that requires some flexibility, some ab strength, and a flexible back to really round and exaggerate that arching of the back to get the knee all the way into your nose. That's how your foot can get all the way to the front of the mat to come up to Warrior 1. But what can often happen is your foot will get stuck. So you'll try to get up here and you'll get stuck. It'll be like, why isn't my foot getting all the way up there? And it's normally because we're not really rounding the shoulders, or we don't have that strength or flexibility yet. So there are other ways to get from a downward dog to a warrior. One way is, instead of coming from that three-legged dog straight to the warrior, you can stop in a tabletop position, take the right foot to the front of the mat, and then lift up. So stopping in a table is a great option. And another way you can do this is by lifting your hands higher. So I have 2 blocks here, but if you have 2 Harry Potter books or something like that, 2 things that are kind of able to lift you higher off your mat, you place your hands on the mat in the downward dog, and then you'll be able to get your foot forward a lot easier with your hands lifted up. So right leg to the sky, and then Warrior 1, right side. Comes a lot easier with the hands lifted. So there we go. That's how you get from a downward facing dog into the warrior pose. And the sun salutations that I've introduced before are the way that we get from standing to sitting on the mat. So that's a foundational part of the flow, is being able to know how do we get from laying on the mat to standing up, to our downward dog to standing up. It's all about finding those connections between the poses. So another thing I wanted to mention in this video is the structure of a flow. So normally when we start a practice, even if you're at home and you're doing your yoga practice in 10 minutes, it can be nice to have that same structure that you would recognize from a studio yoga class, simply by adding a grounding arrival portion to your flow and a warm down sequence at the end. So one way that I really like to start my classes is just by sitting in a comfortable cross-legged seat and feeling your sit bones grounding onto the earth. You can also sit on some blocks if that feels better for you, and feel the crown of your head pulling towards the sky, the hands resting on the knees, the shoulders squeezing together. And as you sit like this, you can simply breathe. Notice the way your body feels here, and let your breath fully come in and out. So the point of this is just to arrive, to be here, Because sometimes if we just come straight home from work and we dive straight into our flow, we can be like, whoa, where is my brain right now? It's certainly not in my practice. So just giving yourself an opportunity to arrive is great. And there's a couple of other poses you can do from a seated position. You can just pull your fingertips high to the sky. You can interlace the fingers, pushing the knuckles towards the sky, rounding the spine to come into a nice rounded shape with your spine, and coming up and down can feel really nice. And you can also take your right hand down to the right side of your mat and your left fingertips pulling away from you. Inhaling, the hands coming up. Left hand down, right fingertips pulling away to the left side of you. And then the other one you can do from here, taking your hands up, your left fingertip come to the right knee and the right hand comes behind the back. So this is a little seated spinal flow twist. And you can do that on both sides, right hand to left knee. So just finding that arrival, a little twist, a little stretch, coming back to your breath is always a great way to start your practice. And then from that warm-up position, you come into your tabletop, and from your tabletop, you can transition into downward facing dog. That's often how I begin my classes. I find that it feels really nice and grounding. And I also wanted to introduce another pose today for you guys. So you're getting a lot of different things in this third day. The structure of a flow. So after you do a sun salutation or two, this really helps you invigorate your body. It gives you some energy. It gives you some prana flowing around in your body. That's what you want, because first you ground in, then you energize. And once you're energized, that's when you get into your standing poses. So we already introduced the Warrior One and the Warrior Two, but I wanted to introduce a third pose. So we already did Warrior One, right side. Your hips are squared to the front of your mat, and then you open into Warrior Two. We did that one yesterday. And how you transition into the pose we're learning today is simply by finding a Warrior Two position. So come along and do this with me if you're doing this along with me at home. So you bend the right knee, you open the arms into Warrior Two, and then you straighten the front knee. And now, imagine your back is against a wall. You don't want to let your torso come forward. You want your torso to stay in line with your legs. As your right hand extends towards the horizon, you imagine that your fingertips are going as far as they can to touch the wall ahead of you. And when you can't go any further, you let the hand naturally land on the leg. And this is called a triangle pose. And you gaze to the top hand. Remember, imagining the back is against an imaginary wall. What often happens in a triangle pose is people are very, very eager to get their hand to the ground. But what will often happen is, I'll show you. From this angle, you'll be able to see it. So we come into the triangle pose, right? And we're doing really well. We're coming straight to the horizon. But then when we want to go down, if we don't have the flexibility, we'll end up doing this. Our body will go all the way to the left, but we want it to be in line with our body. So I look like I'm on one nice plane. You don't want your body to tilt this way. And the main thing about this is that there's no enlightenment to be found by your hand landing on the ground. Actually, what ends up happening is, by performing this pose with correct alignment, you'll find that your flexibility will slowly improve over time. So by feeling that fingertip extend towards the horizon as far as you can, and then opening up into your natural landing point of the hand, mine lands somewhere on my thigh or my shin, and then I feel the energy of my left fingertips pulling towards the sky. Over time, slowly but surely, your right hand will go farther. Your right hand will go further down your leg. But it all happens slowly but surely. You can't rush this stuff. And that's part of the yoga experience. You can't rush it. So let's try that on the left side. The left toe extends to the front of your mat, pointing to the front of your mat. We're in our warrior two pose to start. We already learned that one, so it provides a good base to start from. And then we straighten the front leg, the left fingertips extending towards the horizon, opening up into triangle pose, imagining the back against that imaginary wall, the right fingertips extending towards the sky, and holding for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now we come back up, and I'll introduce one more pose today. Our feet come to face the side of our mat, and we come into a wide leg forward fold. So we just release forward, letting ourselves hang. You can try grabbing your hands in a fist and pulling the fist over your head. And then your hands can come back to the waist, inhaling up. So you can see that the warrior two and the triangle pose and the wide leg forward fold, they all have open hips. So this is how we connect them all together. And how do we get from here back down to the ground? I'll introduce a pretty fun way to do so, that I like to do anyway. So we're going to take our hands to the center of our feet, and we're just going to let our weight come to our hands, and we can slowly hop our feet towards our hands, and then lower down into a seat, into maybe a butterfly pose, with the soles of our feet touching. And a butterfly pose is a really nice, easy hip opener. You'll feel a nice stretch here as you round your back to take your face towards your toes. And feeling that nice stretch here. And hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. And now, how do we end our flow? So, we had our little warm-up, we did a few sun salutations, we go through some standing poses, warrior 1, warrior 2, triangle pose, wide leg forward fold. What do we do after that? Well, we need a warm down sequence now. So what I normally like to do is come onto our backs. So on our back, we lay down, feeling our whole spine resting on the mat. And this is where we want to begin to feel our breath deepening and slowing down. And one pose I love to warm down with is a spinal twist. So let's take our right knee into the chest. Our left hand comes to our right knee. And we feel our left hip shimmying under our right to come into a twist. So you can see my right hip is now stacked over my left. My right knee is on my left side, and I open my arms wide and gaze to my right hand. I can let my left hand rest on my knee over here, and just holding and twisting. And then you can come, after holding the pose, into the other side. The right hand comes to the left knee, shimmying the right hip under the left, and twisting over to the left hand. So this is the other side, spinal twist. And what's great about a spinal twist is that what I always cue in this pose is to notice your breathing, notice the exhale becoming longer than your inhale, and just arriving here and feeling yourself surrendering into your mat. So after we've warmed up, we've done our flows, we've done our standing postures, and we arrive into our warm down sequence, this is a chance to just integrate everything we've learned so far, everything we've felt in our practice. And then of course, after we do the relaxation poses, we come into our Shavasana, our final resting pose, where we completely release and relax. So this is just a tutorial, it's not the full class, but I wanted to give you that whole structure so you understand how to build your own class at home. And this is also a much more simplified version than I'd love to give you, because there's obviously so many more postures and so many more warm-ups, so many more warm downs, and there's so many more tips I'd love to give you. And that is why I created my 8-week coaching program, Homegrown Yoga. And I'm very excited about this, also very nervous, but in the best way, when you start something new and exciting. And we're actually starting very, very soon. So we're starting on the 1st of February, and 2021, if you're watching this later. And basically the gist of Homegrown Yoga is that it is a container where I will coach you one-on-one and in a group all about how to become fluent in the language of yoga. So you're not relying on a studio or a teacher, even me. So you can take all this knowledge and you can take it home and you can do yoga on your own around all of your commitments, your work, your children, fitting it into your life. Because everyone has different times they like to do yoga, different lengths of practice, what they want out of their practice. Some people want relaxation, some people want exercise. And you can get so much out of yoga, and there's so much to learn about yoga. We will be going into the 8-limbed path of Ashtanga Yoga. So we'll dive more than just the poses, which we will learn, of course. We're going to dive into a beginner-friendly version of the Ashtanga primary series. But Ashtanga translates as 8 parts. And those 8 parts are the philosophy of yoga. And I find the philosophy of yoga so fascinating, and I'm very excited to dive deep into it. So you can take your practice off the mat and into your life, integrate it into the way you exist in the world. So if you're interested in joining me for Homegrown Yoga, there's a link below for you to learn all the information about it, and I would really love for you to join me. It's sure to be a lot of fun. And as always, if you have any questions at all about yoga or this lesson, please leave a comment and I would love to answer it. And you can also join my Facebook group, Yoga with Kimmy, at the link below as well. So thank you so much for joining me for Fluid Flow, everyone, and please just stay in touch. Thank you, everyone. Bye.